Hi, my name is Corey Olson. I'm owner and CEO of Infusion Solutions. And today we're going to give you a sneak peek on our new wine and spirits solution built on Business Central. We've been in the Microsoft channel for over 20 years. We're located in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we specialize in creative solutions throughout the whole Microsoft stack. We specialize in distribution, not-for-profit, higher education, and healthcare, but we have a tailored solution for wine and spirits wholesalers. Up to now, that's been built on Microsoft Dynamics GP. We work with over 20 wine and spirits distributors across the U.S., and we offer consulting services on business processes, integration services, Power Platform development, and of course support both Microsoft Dynamics GP and now Business Central. Today, I'm really excited to show you some sneak peeks in this new solution we built that leverages the best of Business Central, 365 Wine Trade, and some custom solutions we have added for integrations, reporting, and other things that meet the needs of our wine and spirits wholesalers. I'm really excited to show you this new feature today. I hope you enjoy it. So today's topic is all about allocations. Now, in our Infusion GP solution, we called that reservations because GP called their process of committing inventory to orders and sales invoices as allocations. So to avoid confusion, we called ours reservations. In Business Central, it's the exact opposite. Business Central's native way to commit inventory to transactions is called reservations. And the process that we're going to look at from 365 Wine Trade that we've incorporated into our Infusion BC solution is called allocations. So what is allocations? Allocations is basically a way for you to segment your inventory. So as we have things in the system, sales orders come in, we have open stock or inventory. And normally what the native Business Central would do, just like GP would do and most ERPs, is if it's available, then the customer gets that inventory. But as we know, there's some rules wrapped around sometimes when we get low stock or when we have certain items that are very limited in stock, that we want to make sure we control who gets the inventory. So in order to do that, that's what allocations are meant to. So it allows us to segment our inventory. Now, you're going to see that happen today, and we're going to do that through what we call an item journal, through an allocation journal that commits the inventory to a source. And the source can be a variety of things. It can be a MasterCard, like a customer record or a salesperson, which is really exciting. We'll talk more about that. It can be a filter to define groups of that, or it can apply to everyone in a certain circumstance, and we can limit inventory. So we've got lots of options here to unwind today of how we commit that inventory. The goal then is by doing that, as that order comes into the system, it checks then that allocation and determines through another feature 365 Wine Trade has added, which is called an inheritance path. The inheritance path looks at the sequence of sources. So you might have several different allocations to several different sources, and it's going to look at that inheritance path and look to see what is the sequence of how I should distribute this allocation into the system and applies that then at the line item. This allocation part, if an item is put into allocation, it really takes over Business Central's base reserve and says, we're going to do it a different way through that process. And then that really allows the system to determine who gets the inventory. We also have a feature in here that moves out expired jobs. So you can't allocations. So we can say, hey, these allocations, I want it to end at a certain time. It doesn't have the ability to start forward at a certain time, but it does have the ability to expire and end at a certain time. So without further delay, I'm going to go on through to kind of show you some of the features that are in this solution. The first, I'm just going to start with, what are we trying to end with, right? Before we unwrap every setup option that we have to get there, what is the point of where we want it to end? And that's on a sales order. So here in my Business Central company, I have a sales order open. I've entered an item for a customer. Again, theoretically, this would be imported in. I have 10 cases. It's reserved the 10 cases, which is Business Central's inventory reservation. And then I can see that it's allocated 10 cases to this line item. When I look at the allocation and drill into that, I can see that it was taken from actually 2 different allocations that were set up. I had one set up for the customer specifically, and then they depleted all of that. And I had another allocation set up for an on-premise, which this customer met as well. So they were able then to use some of that allocation as well. Again, if there was open stock, it would let me, get the remaining from open stock as well. So all of those are options within the system. And we're going to see, how did the setup happen to make this really work? The first thing is, you can set at a master record, an item, a customer, a sales rep, the ability to allocate the item. So this can be inherent as you set up new items or as you set up new customers into the templates. But you can toggle that off for an item if an item should never be allowed to be allocated as well. So let's just visit what it looks like on the cards, and then I'm going to show you more of an overall place to manage all of those. So I'm just going to drill into my item here. And in doing so, I'm going to then scroll down on the item into the what we call fast tabs to see the allocation. So here in the inventory allocations on the item, I can choose whether to allow it to allocate or not. Now I can also select for the item to require full allocation. Now this is a really neat feature that we didn't offer before. Full allocation means that every time I receive inventory, I have to allocate it all out. It will not let me sell above that amount. So it actually won't allow back orders if the item is fully allocated. It will not allow you to sell. It'll just basically lock up the inventory automatically if you haven't allocated it to stuff. So you won't be able to sell it if you didn't put it in allocation. So this is a really neat feature for those products that, one, maybe is very limited from a supplier and you never know when you're going to get it. So you don't really want to get back orders pending up on something. And the second thing would be, if every time you get that, you need to make sure you know who it goes to. That's a great option in the system there, fully allocate. You'd only use it for those options. We do have other options to say don't back order on an item, so that's not the reason to use it, but it's one of the features of that item. We'll talk about some of these other features as we peel the layers of the setup today. Just like we peeked at item, we can also peek at the customer here, and you can set up at the customer as well what the allocation is. And I'm going to show you how to manage that more at a holistic level, but individually at the card of the customer or item, we can mark to say how we want to handle these allocations. So I'm just going to scroll down. And here I can say I'm allowing this customer to be allocated to. When I do that, it automatically fills it in an allocation code. And that allocation code is automatically set up as the cust underscore and their customer number. So again, we'll talk a little more about that here in just a minute. So again, I can manage that individually at those different MasterCard levels, or I can look at that as a more holistic level. So let's look at that. I'm going to go into my 365 wine trade menu, and I'm going to go into inventory allocations. And I'm going to go first, let's visit the setup window. Within this setup window, this is kind of a company-wide setup, so it's not something you're going to touch a lot. A lot of this points to the different types of jobs or things that will run that we will set up for you. But within here, I have set to say when I set up an allocation source, so the item is what we're allocating, the sources are who we're allocating it to. When I set up those different sources, I can then, the code that it will use as the allocation source starts with this. So we have a set kind of routine that we will set up for you, but that's where it gets these from. So let's talk a little bit about all the different sources you can use. So you can allocate stuff to a customer, to a sales region, which might be applicable for some of you, might not be. That would be if you segmented your organization into different markets, that might be applicable. A salesperson, so that's exciting because we didn't have that feature available in our Infusion GP, but we do have it in our Infusion BC now. Customer posting group, this is going to be similar to what we would call customer class in GP. That's going to be your on-premise, off-premise, etc. We also have a more detailed breakdown. So this is customer price group. So you might, this is what you would set deals maybe for, or discount levels. Again, some people, that's a one-to-one to your customer class. For some people, that might be a little bit more of a breakdown from that customer posting group. Now, there are some other options located in this drop-down box. We don't anticipate most of our current clients to use those, but there are some other options where we can allocate inventory specifically to some other options as well. So now that I've set up what are the sources, again, I can manage that at each source card, or I can look at that more overall. So I'm going to go into our inventory allocations master data setup. Within here is all of the sources that we just saw that we have the option to allocate to. In addition, some setup to the items, which is what we're allocating. So let's visit that first. Within here, it's just like at the item card where I can set up to allocate or uncheck to say that this is not allocated. Again, this button here that we already talked about, the ability to fully allocate. Now, a lot of times you're going to see this allocation inheritance code. We're going to talk about that. You set a default overall for your company. They did build in the ability to override that hierarchy for a singular customer or item. So you can follow a different path, probably not likely. You usually will defer to the company setup within that inheritance path. And these are just informational fields, not anything that you upkeep. So all of my items right now are set to be able to allocate to. The next thing is who I'm going to do it to. So let's look at our customer. And a lot of these will kind of follow the same vein. So we're just going to peek at a couple. We won't go through every single one of these setups. So just like at the card, here I have set up to say, allow this to allocate, and then it's automatically come up with a code. And then of course the allocation inheritance, again, I could override if I wanted to. Now I want to show a feature that you do have an option for here to make it nice and easy. For chains, you can set up the chain individually as an allocation source, and I'm going to show you how to do that. However, if you never allocate to the individual customer and you always allocate to the chain, notice what I did here. In Publix, I have several Publix customers. If I had a parent account, this would work better if I had a parent one. But what I did was take the parent account number, so we'll pretend that's this C18, And I made it the same for all of these customers. So they're going to share any allocation that I would put to this allocation code. So that's an option in the system if I never want to individually. Now, if there's sometimes that I want to allocate to the Publix chain, and there's sometimes that I want to allocate to the individual Publix store, this would not be the way to do it. I will show you an alternative way to do that. So this is one, and it's super simple. Name that allocation code as the chain record, and then we wouldn't have to worry about them not sharing allocations. Otherwise, each individual customer has their allocation code set up. Now, this doesn't mean I have an allocation or I'm going to, it just means I can, if in the future there was something I want to allocate specifically to their customer. Again, most of these are very similar, so I'll just peek. Only customers and items have an alternative to follow a different inheritance path. The rest of them are very simple. Do you allow allocations to these? Again, this is similar to customer class in GP. For us, it's in Business Central, it's the customer posting group. And here, automatically when I do that, whatever I put as the code that is a prefix will show here, in this case, cusp post group. And then I have my different, automatically it fills in for the posting group itself. So now I've set up each one of these. Again, I know everybody's excited about sales reps, same kind of concept there. Once I have done that, let's go look at our allocation list. So I'm going to go into my 365 wine trade menu, inventory allocations, allocation list. This allocation list shows me all of the sources that I have the ability to allocate a product to. Now, it doesn't mean everything that has an allocation. We'll show you how to narrow that down. This is just everybody who's a source that I could allocate to. Now, I showed you one way to do Publix as far as making those all the same. Another option is to build your own allocation card. So if I go into my allocation card, you can set up a new allocation yourself. You can name that allocation and you can base it on a filter. So in this case, I said, now luckily right now my Publix chain actually was all sequentially numbered together. That's probably unlikely. So I showed some examples of how you can group those customers together. So from here, I can say my Publix chain is customers C018 ... through 20 and, which is the pipe sign 21. So you really can build a group of pretty much any customers. The key is if you're building some of these custom groups, we do have to make sure that we handle that within the inheritance path. But this is an option of what you have in the system. Chain just saying, hey, this chain and identifying it is not available in there. Again, that's why we have to do the groups, or we have to be able to say, I'm never going to individually allocate to those chains. Sales reps, again, I have each of my sales reps set up so that I can then allocate to that. Within here, I can also filter on my list to open allocations in the system. So I'm just going to click over here to a save view that I have where I said I want to filter the remaining quantity not equal to 0. So here are all of the customers that I have allocations going on for. Within here, I can look at and go to related, and I can see my allocation subtotals very easily. So I can see for this customer, I have item 1038, Gray Goose. In order to do that, that's just one product. If I click down here, I think on this product, I have a couple different products. Yeah. So you can see I have how much of each product, and I can scroll over to the right to see how much is remaining and what is going on in the system here. So really nice information just by clicking on there. I can drill into this card as well, and I can see who actually entered these ledger entries. So I can say, oh, look, the initial was put on for this item on 10/1. I had another one that was put on for this item on 10/1, or on 1/1, excuse me. And then this item I put into reservation on 3/1. And I can, again, keep drilling into these to get more detail. So we're going to see, how do we actually put product in to allocation. So now I have my sources set up and I can see there's activity, but how did that get allocated to that source? So we're going to enter through an allocation journal in order to make that happen. So under our 365 wine trade menu, under inventory allocations, I'm going to go to my allocation journal. Within here, we can set up multiple batches. So each user can use their own batch so that we don't step on anybody else if you have multiple people managing allocations. When I enter into this allocation journal, I have the choice to do several different types. The initial is putting stuff into allocation. So I want to set aside this much of the inventory. I also can do an adjustment. And so I can adjust that positive or negative into the allocation. I can transfer it. So let's say that I have allocations, one case for each sales rep, or two cases for each sales rep. And one sales rep already sold their case and the other one is said, hey, I'm not going to end up doing that. So you can transfer from one to the other. Now, taken, inherited, not allocated, taken, manual, all of these taken ones, except taken manual, which is a way to correct if something maybe got entered late and you want to then show that it was taken out, you can enter that. But the rest of these are all going to be done automatically as sales invoices are posted in the system. So as sales go through the system, that's what's going to post to these journal entry using this. The expired is done automatically through the expiration job. So it's, as we put something in here, you'll see I get the choice of putting an expiration date. And once I do that, that job will pick that up and take that any remaining allocation out of the system when it meets that date. So in this case, I'm going to do initial. I'm going to go ahead and type in my item. I could start to type the description as we've shown in Business Central before. Now I get to name who I'm putting this allocation to. So here's all of the customers or the premise. And again, you can start typing. So if I wanted to save this for on-prem, I could start typing and it's going to filter out what that's for. My posting date is really today. Again, the one feature that is not available is doing forward dating. So if I wanted this to happen, it isn't as of now. When I put it into the system, that allocation is on. So obviously I can wait to post this batch, but the date is really just when I'm doing it. I have to put my warehouse location. Again, if you have your own warehouse, just one, that'll be really easy for you to default to, but you might have multiple warehouses. It is specific to each warehouse, obviously, for the inventory stock. Next, I can say how much I want to. So I'm going to say 5 cases is what I want to put. And if I wanted to put an expiration in here, then I can do so. Now, notice this reserve quantity. This is going back to base BC. What happens in the system is it literally takes that 5 cases out of BC's inventory reserve and holds it over here into inventory allocation. That way, when orders come in, it knows, oop, nothing at reserve. Let me check allocation, and allocation takes over on how it should parse out that inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and then post my journal of allocations. Now I'm going to tell you what I really love about this process in doing a journal here. It is traceable. Just like everything else, it's audit trail compliant in the system. I can tell who did it, when they posted it, and what happened. And we all know that becomes a question in the system of, oh, did somebody make an adjustment? Adjustments are done through this journal. You can't affect the quantity manually without doing it through a journal. So, you know, maybe not as easy as just going in and typing over like in our current system, but way easier to trace back and to get that transparency. So nice and not too hard of a process. Obviously, you'll get used to that. So I'm just going to hit post, and it's going to post that into the system. So now if I look at my cusp post on, and I go here into my related and allocation subtotals, now you can see my product, this 1009, and my 5 cases that I put on allocation for them. Now, there's lots of other ways to see what is happening on allocation and what items are on allocation. I'm going to show you some of those on the item list and some reports into doing that. But let's just peek first at the canned reports that 365 Wine Trade has available. We will be modifying these slightly from what they look like I'm showing you now. But honestly, the format of them is going to be very similar, and I think you'll see very similar to the solution if you're familiar with our Infusion GP solution. You can run this report either by the allocation source or by the item level. So we've been looking at, we'll take a peek at both, but let's first start with the item. A nice thing here is you can show the quantities in the base unit of measure, which for most of our distributors is bottle, or you can show it in a case equivalence. You can filter down to certain items, certain allocations, etc. But I'm just going to go ahead and run it all so you can get a nice view. So here shows me the item and all of the allocation codes of who it's allocated to, how much is allocated, how much has been taken, what's the percentage. Again, some of this will clean up a little, but you can see there's quite a lot of information here. And this is all now in case equivalents because that's what I chose to show that in. So really great report. If I go back here, I'm going to go back to our allocation reports, and I'm going to show it on the opposite way to show you from the source. So here's our source, and then here's all the items that they have allocated to them. So again, really nice reports in order to do if you're looking for a more just pretty presentable fashion. And as with any reports in Business Central, you can take those to Excel as well. Another great kind of analytical way to look at any of the allocations is just to go to the ledger entries. So all those ledger entries, this one's right now filtered on on-prem because that's what I clicked on when I hit the ledger entries. But if I take off that, you can see here that I can see every single entry within the system that has been made. Not only the initials of what was put in, but I can also see what was taken. I can see any negative adjustments, transfers, etc. And of course, we'll have available the user ID in this view as well, so you can see who did that. And as you can see in here, I can see the actual customer that took the inventory and get great information there. I have this filtered view. Again, you can save views. So I have a view that says open allocations. So I can see all of the open allocations for all customers here. And don't forget, just like in any list inside Business Central, I can turn this to a pivot table by hitting my Analyze button feature. So here I can then see a sum and then see that by customer as well. So again, a lot of reports, and you can save these here, as you can see I've done. And I can make changes and change that around. So a lot of great information that you have the ability to do and save without going to Excel or running a canned report as well. So just wonderful amounts of transparency and information. So now that I have my inventory allocated to the source, the next key for me to do is to make sure that I define the inheritance path. So how do I want that to go in sequence? If I have an item to a customer, to a sales rep, how is it going to know what to deduct from first? That's really the goal of the inheritance path. So 365 Wine Trade gives us an option to that. So I'm going to go into my inheritance codes list. Again, you can set up multiple paths, which can be identified on a certain item or a certain customer. We're going to probably, discourage that a little because it gets a little confusing for people to know what is the sequence. Usually people kind of set that more as a company level. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the default one here, and I'm going to hit the inheritance sequence that I've set up. I'm going to explain open pool in just a minute, but the path that I have it going is first check this open pool, which is going to be used for our hard allocations that I'll describe a little bit more in detail next. Then it's going to go to customer allocations, then sales rep allocations, then the market or sales region, then the customer posting group, and then I have some limiting that I'm going to talk about, which is another really cool feature of Business Central. So first, so this is how it's going to run through those allocations and make sure that it then refers back to the correct type of allocation card. Let's talk a little bit about some really cool features, and I'm going to show them in the sales transaction to show you as well. The first that I kind of want to talk about is this open pool idea. So open pool really can be used in two different ways, and let me explain why we would use it. In 365 Wine Trade right now, everything is deducted as it's used. So I'm allocating the inventory based on what is in inventory or on purchase order. So in that case, if unlike in our Infusion GP solution, you can allocate whatever you want, regardless if it's in stock. In the Infusion BC solution with 365 Wine Trade, we have to say it's reserving against real inventory or purchase orders coming into the system as well. When I reserve that for that allocation, then it's going to take that inventory, like I said, and move it over. It deducts it as it uses it. Now, some people, we had in our Infusion GP solution, hard and soft allocations. So what it's doing is what we would call a soft allocation, meaning it deducts as it uses it. Some people say, I don't really care until it gets down to the last 10 cases or 20 cases. When it gets down to low stock, that's when I want allocation to start kicking in. To do that, that's what we would call a hard reserve. In order for you to replicate that in this system, you would allocate all of that inventory, but you're going to allocate it to open pool first. So any open pool. So if I had 80 cases and I only care about the last 20, the 60 would be allocated to open pool. The 20, then I can break up to on-premise, to certain sales reps, just customer specific. It first will run through all of the open pool before it kicks into that allocation. So exactly the same way we would have worked in our system at hard allocation. It's just you're allocating everything in there to open pool into doing that. Now, don't forget, if this is an item that you want to make sure you always set an allocation, you can set that fully allocate, but just remember to use that with caution because it does mean it can't assign inventory like in back orders. So once I have that open pool, then I can do that. So that's a really neat feature. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on a sales order. So I'm just going to go into my sales orders where I've entered some orders with different allocation examples. And we're going to take a peek at some of those and what does it look like as it came into the system. So I'm going to look at this order. I've named, cheated here, so I'd remember which orders were what. And in the PO number, I put what example we're looking at here. So this is an item, a wine limited item that I've so smartly named. And I'm going to go into this allocation quantity. And this customer might have had an allocation, but I had an open pool on it. So it's just taking from an open pool, which I've said is open to all customers. So I have no limitations on this. Anybody can take it. And it's going to drain all of that through until we get to the part where it now has nothing left on there. So I'm going to also show you on this line, I'm going to hit my fact box, which is this little I circle that we have inside of Business Central. And within this fact box here, I can also see what is available for this allocation. I've taken the last of the open pool allocation, so there's 0 left. I had 16 in open pool, and this customer just now drained that. So you can see that it's 0. Now, if they had ordered more than that, and they had some of the allocation that was still open, just like I showed in my first example, it would deduct out of both allocations. For this customer, there's not any additional inventory left. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our next one. So on this example, I'm doing an allocation to on-premise. So I had this item I put in here to a post group of on. And from here, I'm going to click on this line. Notice over here on our remaining allocation, I still have 11 left. So it took 5. I'm going to drill in. It's showing it took 5 from the customer posting group for this item. But it still has 11 left, and I can drill in to see what, if there was any other allocations for this item, it would show here as well that met for this customer. Again, it's doing filtering based on this item and customer combination. So in that case, I have nothing left for this item customer combination. Besides these 11 cases here, that's the only other one, and I'm using 5 of those now. Again, great information, I feel, just from the sales order as you click in. If you are like, I wonder how that's getting that or not. The next one I want to go to here is a sales rep. So I know a lot of people are excited about being able to allocate 2 sales reps. So let's look here. I've reserved 2. So that, again, reserve is BC's inventory reservation, and I wanted to ship 2, but I'm only allocated 1 here. So what happens here is I can see that I've taken 1 case from the allocation, but I had some open pool, or open inventory that was not allocated. You can see I have 0 allocations left, but I didn't have the whole product allocated. Because of that, it did find other inventory available, and you can see it reserved the 2. So again, it can work several different ways depending on your scenario. If you just don't allocate a part of the reservation of the inventory, it will just assume it goes there. But if you want to make sure to control it first, that's where we'd put all of that available into that open pool, and then allow it to deduct as it got out, and it wouldn't have anything left in reservation. It would have said, I don't have enough left in order to do that. So lots of different options on to that part. I'm going to go over here, and we're going to look at, talk about a limiting option that you have in the system. Or actually, I have one more example I wanted to go through before I hit that. Maybe not. Oh yeah, here we go. So before we get to that option, let's take a look at this off-premise allocation that I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and enter so you can see it happen in action. Again, you're not going to be entering into Business Central. Most of you are going to enter into Pocket Advantage, and this is going to happen in the back end, but you can see the logic that's going to happen into the system. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my 1037, and I want to enter 5 cases, but it's going to yell at us because it doesn't have enough inventory to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and say 5. And my system's just moving a little slow because I have my Teams on. So here it's going to say, look, you don't have enough to reserve the whole 5 cases. So I'm just going to say no and let it do its job. And then we can kind of see that it's in our world, what will happen is this quantity to ship will only match into what is able to be reserved. Now, notice this partial case here. It's trying to reserve 1.41 cases. That's something native to BC. Luckily, 365 Wine Trade has added an option to only do whole amounts. And the other benefit you have of us bringing in orders from Pocket Advantage is we do a lot of these checks for you, and we would never let a partial case go, and we would change the quantity to ship to what is a whole number. But in here, notice the allocation here is 0 because I had nothing allocated for that item. Now, if I jump to that item to see on my fact box here, you can see I have nothing for this customer combination of this item. If I go back to that item allocation list, so I'm just going to go really quickly to my allocation list. I could also do this by going into the item itself. And I'm just going to go into my ledger entries real quick. And let's just see if we could tell, hey, what are all the different allocations I have for this item? And I'll show you a way to look at that on the list view as well from the item. So I'm just going to filter to that value real quick on this 1037. And I'm going to see anything with an available case. So I could say anything with a remaining case amount. That is not equal to 0. And let's just see what reservations are on. So here I can see that I have it allocated to different sales reps that are available, but none of the sales reps that happens to be in my order. So when I go to my order here and look at my sales reps, Joe was not on my list, which is why I'm not getting it. If they had it, they've already taken it, but there's not a remaining amount for that sales rep. So that's why then I would not be able to ship anything but what is not already reserved to those allocations. Now, another way I can just kind of cheat real quick to see is anything in allocation, not just to this customer item combination. I can jump to that item, and we've added, 365 Wine Trade has added to the item list a column that shows us the available allocations. So if I go into my item list, I can also see it in here, by the way, but I actually wanted to show you from the item list, so let's do that. I can see it from the item card as well, but it's a little easier to filter and show you from the item list itself. From here, I can also see any allocations available, and I can sort and filter. So if I go down to my product here, I can see what is in that allocation. And again, then I can dig further into, and you can see here is a summary of all of the allocations. So again, I went to the allocation ledger just to filter down to see what's remaining, but you can also just go to this item list and get a nice quick view And again, Joe is not on the list as to inventory available for that allocation. So really great information just straight off the item list, or again, a nice filter away in your allocation ledger list as well. So that's entering those parts. I want to talk about what limiting is, because this is a new feature that we don't offer in our Infusion GP solution, but I know has been requested in the past, and that's called a limiting factor. Now, what we can do with this limiting is the ability to set up to say, I only want to allow one per customer. So while we're in the sales orders, before we get there, let me show you how it works, and then we can see what we did to set that up to make it work. So in this case, I have to Corey's Wine and Spirits, I have one item here, 1017, and I have reserved and it's allocated for my one item to me. If we look over here in remaining allocations, once that populates, I have 0 left. So when I try to make this 2, it's going to yell at me and it's going to say that I exceed the limiting for that allocation. So it's not going to let me do more than that 1. So I'm going to go ahead and look at that, and we're going to see how did we set that up for that item. So let's jump to that item card, and I'm just going to jump over here and go to show details, and we'll jump into that item. Now, just like the other things that we do on allocations, you really can manage this in a couple different ways. One is to manage it here at the item card itself. So you can say for inventory allocations, I want to set up a limiting unit type. Now you can do case or unit, which for most of you, that means case or bottle. And you can say you want how much you want to limit. That means the allocation is going to look here to the card. And then it will decide, oh, okay, you have one limiting part. Another way to do this, and I'm going to show you one more option. We're going to go back to our inventory allocation list. When I set up the limiting card, I did that one as a limiting to customer. So I did this limiting customer. And I set up here and I said, I want all customers, but I only want them to do 1 case each. Now, I didn't set up a limiting amount at the allocation card. So if I'm doing that and using that feature for all customers for multiple items, and I don't want all of those items to be limited by the same quantity, then I wouldn't fill that in here at the card. I would fill it in at the item card. So if this is blank, it'll look to the item card to find the limiting quantity. If I want all the items that I'm going to allocate to this limiting customer, then I would set up the limiting type here and the amount. Then all of those items would be limited to 1 case as an example. So either way, you can do that. So this is saying any items allocated to this allocation source is only limited to 1 case per customer. Once it's used that allocation, it will not let them go over that anymore. And how then did we do that? I'm going to just peek here at the ledger entries. Again, we just entered the allocation. Now, obviously, you're going to want to do all of the inventory because otherwise it would also let them get any stock. Now, if you were saying the first 80 cases, I don't care. So again, that we would go back to that open pool. I would allocate 80 cases to open pool, and then I would allocate the rest. You could do to this limiting card, and then this limiting allocation would say all customers would only get 1 case each. So some really cool features for us to help you set up, of course, into doing that. And then, of course, expirations, like I said, if you named an expiration, so some of these are going on and you only want that to happen for X number of weeks or months, whatever you put in there, then the system will automatically move those out of the system as well. So I hope today you've got, I know that's a lot and it's very detailed. There's so many different options into the system, but I hope what you got a taste of is how robust it is in the system managing that inventory and the flexibility you have, whether it be controlling the end of a stock, controlling all of the stock, limiting the stock, or really parsing out different parts and segments of that inventory. Just like everything that we're deploying in our Infusion BC solution using 365 Wine Trade and a variety of other combinations of products and codes, extensions that help for our wine and spirits distributors, we're creating manuals for each of these. Again, a lot of them are off the base if it was from 365 Wine Trade, added in with any customizations that we have done for Infusion customers. In here, you will receive a manual all put together. We're doing it piece by piece, of course, right now as we work through our solution that really goes over everything that I did. So our goal is to hopefully help you, obviously with training videos and us helping you set up originally and a consultant one-on-one, but also to leave you with really great information. So as your business changes, you can go back and say, now, how did that function? And we'll be upkeeping those manuals as well. So I hope you enjoyed this process and really have gotten a glimpse of how we plan to handle allocations. If you liked what you saw here today and want more information on next steps or to see more about our wine and spirits solution on Business Central, please email us at info@infusion.com, give us a call with the number on the screen, or visit our website, infusion.com. Check out the Wine and Spirits resource page where you can see other features that we've released for preview as well. Thanks.